How many times in your life have you wanted to do something but you almost did? How many trips have you wanted to take that you did? How many kids matches did you want to go that you just kind of missed? How many ideas that you have that you see in the startup world that you thought, hey, I had that idea 7 years ago, but you did nothing about it? I have a quiz right off the bat just to get everybody in on a bright Sunday morning. Nice to see a full house here. Anybody want to guess what these numbers are? Except Preeti. She knows what it is. Anybody? Shout out. 30,000, 15,000, 10,000.
30.
30,000 is the number of days each of us live in our lives. If you live to a life expectancy of 82, which is what it is in the Western world. If I take an average of the age in this room, at least for the men, let's take an average of 41. Women, of course, are more like 30, right? Just from the looks of it. So you have a few more days. So we live 30,000 days in our lifetime. If you're 41, 15,000, half your life is kind of gone already. And if you take about sleep and just a little bit of R&R out, that's another 5,000 days that are gone. So you have about 10,000 days left in life. If you're a male, if you're a woman, a few more thousand days. What do you want to accomplish in this? And we'll talk about how life expectancy has increased and the working life has increased as well. In our parents' generations, they used to retire at about 58, maybe 60. Now it's very common for people to be working till 65, 68, even 70. And some people, take Rupert Murdoch, take many others, they're working till 85, 90. Warren Buffett is like, 91 now. Still working every day, right? So we have very little time left. So I read this book called The Top 5 Regrets of Dying by this lady called Bronnie Ware. And Bronnie, for those of you who have heard of her, is a palliative care nurse. So she basically helps people in the last leg of their life, right? So you're pretty much diagnosed with a terminal disease. You have, literally in her case, she did this book by dealing with people who only had 12 weeks to live in their life, just 3 months. And she talked to them about, hey, what are your regrets in life, if any? And she talked to literally, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of patients, and she compiled all that. She has a beautiful blog and of course a book I strongly recommend it. And she asked these people, hey, what are your top 5 regrets? Anybody want to guess what some of the top 5 regrets would be? Even if you read the book, just to see if you remember. What would the top 5 regrets be of people at the end of life? And she has got only 5, right? She doesn't have more than 5. Any guesses?
Not spending time with loved ones.
Not spending time with loved ones, that's definitely one of them.
Travel.
4 more.
Traveling enough.
Travel.
Not following the passion.
Not following passion,
Yeah.
very close. What else?
Being angry and not making up.
Being angry and not making up. Interesting. Close. Here are the 5. The very first one, which was common to every single person, was not living a life true to yourself. What you believe, what you want to pursue, what you want to do, how you want to make the world a better place, including, making up after a fight, whatever it is. Not being true to yourself was the number 1 regret of people on their deathbed. Okay? So that's really, really important. The second, believe it, and by the way, this is ordered list. This is not just 5. This is based on frequency of what she heard. Was, I wish I'd worked less. And there are other things, spend more time with families, stay closer in touch with friends, be more expressive of my feelings, be more self-realized. We'll talk about that. And lastly, the biggest thing that people figured out was that happiness, which I'm going to talk a lot about today, is a choice. Pankaj, being the true banker that he is, he talked about money, and happiness is actually not correlated to money. We'll talk about that. But being true to yourself and letting yourself be happy, making happiness a choice in every moment, choosing to be here and spending 60, 90 minutes here is a choice, right? It might make you happy, it might not make you happy, but it's a choice that you're making. So these 3 things I'm going to talk a lot about, saying, are you authentic? Are you true to yourself? Are you doing what you really want to do? Are you accomplishing the dreams you want to accomplish? Are you bringing them to life? Are you spending a lot of time, like Divya said, with your loved ones and family? Work less is, of course, this is like a dying time kind of regret. But really, what are you doing with that extra time that you have, those 10,000 days that we have left in most of our lives here? So let me talk a little bit about our story, and it's Preeti and my story. We were in the US and in India for the greater part of our married life. Excuse me. And so we spent about 14 years in the US. And I was there probably a little bit longer. We got married, we were living in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley, amazing friends, we had a beautiful house, lots of interesting things to travel, etc., etc. Phenomenal time. However, there's one thing that was always in the back of our mind, and we were both doing very well professionally. She was an early engineer at eBay, I was at IBM, etc., etc. We always had this calling, like something is missing, doesn't feel like home here, right? And in fact, we went all the way, and unfortunately, took the citizenship, right? So we became US citizens as soon as India allowed dual citizenship. But there was something that was missing, and it used to get talked about every single year. I call it the N+1 syndrome, right? For those of you who have returned back from the US, probably have gone through this. Saying next year we're going to move back to India. Next year we're going to, I can see Roshni, right? The next year we're going to move back to India. Just one more year, just once I get promoted, we'll move back. Once I get my green card, we'll move back. Once we get the house, then we can move back. Oh wait, once we get we're close to citizenship. So once we get citizenship, we'll move back. You know what? That N+1 never happens. You keep going on and on and on. And by the way, this is very true, not just about living in the US. This could be true about your corporate career. This could be true about what you're doing in your life, whatever. We're all, I submit, caught in this N+1 syndrome. So we took the first bold step. I was driven not by some big idea about sabbaticals or jobbaticals, but just this saying, we got to get out of this. The only way is to just leave and move to India. Okay? And lo and behold, in 2007, we literally, both of us went and resigned our jobs. I remember the date, 9 January 2007. I called my bosses. I was a director. I had a fairly large team of 300 engineers on my team. I was actually visiting Bangalore for something, just to see what India is like and how Bangalore would be like. We'd never lived in Bangalore. I called up my boss's boss in New York and said, hey, look, I'm done. I'm going to relocate to India. And so if IBM wants to do something, great. Otherwise, I'm out. He's like, what the heck? You can't just quit like this. It makes no sense. You completely lost your mind. This makes no sense. And Preeti also had a job. She quit her job. Of course, we both quit. We put in our resignation, sent the email saying, now we're done. A month later, we're like shit scared, saying, what the hell have we done? What's wrong with us? And of course, we tell our parents, and they're like, completely pagal ho gaya. Right? Pata tha thoda pagal hai, completely pagal ho gaya. This guy's gone completely mad. And then of course, we had to say, okay, what are we going to do? But we said, this is the only way to move to India. Of course, we need jobs. Of course, we need to do something. So then we made our resumes, and we started applying to various jobs and so on and so forth. And that's how we basically moved to India, right? So I joined.
What was the trigger to move to India?
So the trigger to move to India was personal, actually. So both sets of parents are sort of getting older, and we wanted to spend more time with them. Everybody who lives in the US, you've lived a long time in Japan, in Hong Kong, other places, right? You always have this, quest to be closer to family. We had done one Diwali in 14 years. We'd done maybe one Holi, maybe two Holis. I would have probably, out of all my cousins' weddings in those 10, 15 years, I would have attended one wedding. So there was always a little bit of calling. To be very honest, when we moved here, we didn't say we're moving here lock, stock and barrel, because I had been there too long, she'd been there for a while. We said, let's do it as a 2-year experiment. What's the worst that could happen, right? We've got citizenships, we have a house, whatever. We'll figure it out, right? We'll come back, maybe we'll get a junior position, whatever, we'll come back, right? So we'll take a 2-year gig. And which is why we stayed with big corporates, and actually I joined Google, and actually this was again, and we talk about careers, which is one of the big things, like money, as to why people don't want to take breaks, because they think it's a very detrimental step to the career. This was one of the best steps that happened in my career. So I was born engineer, software from, to write code from 9th grade, 10th grade, and I loved computer science, and I did that for a while. Then I was software engineer, senior engineer, principal engineer, manager, all the usual stuff. But after about 10 odd years of writing code, I was getting a little bored, and I felt very excited about product management. I said, I really would like to do product management. And I would have never, in the IBM hierarchy, I would keep rising, and I would have become a VP and whatever, maybe more. But I would have, nobody, they say, you're an engineering guy, right? You can't do product, right? Even at Google, actually, when I interviewed, they had 8 interviews spread over 2 months. And I said, I want to interview for product management. And they said, well, your background is all engineering, so we can't interview for product. And I said, you know what, I don't mind. I mean, worst case, you won't give me a job. They said, no, we really like you for engineering, but we don't like you for product. To the level that we said, look, why don't you do the whole process? So I did, I offered to do 16 interviews at Google, 8 for engineering and 8 for product management. And I said, at the end of it, you guys decide if you're going to give me a job at all, or you're going to be an engineering job or a product job. They had an engineering head job in Hyderabad. I was interviewing in California, but the job was for India because I had already decided to move to India. Anyway, so that was one big sort of personal drive, but the career thing was very interesting. Then I moved to this company called Make My Trip, and one of the biggest things I learned from the founder there, which was very, very interesting, Deep Kalra, but it's a quote he attributes to Jeff Bezos, who we'll hear about later. I'm a big fan of Jeff Bezos, never worked for him, never worked for Amazon, but I've been following him for 20 years, is work hard, have fun, make history, but 2 out of 3 things is not an option. You have to do all 3. And this was the motto that Deep had at Make My Trip. This is the motto that Jeff Bezos has at Amazon. So you used to work really, really hard, including at Make My Trip, or for that matter, any corporate job that you have. And of course, Make My Trip was a younger company than a Google or an IBM where I had worked. So anyway, that was a lovely, lovely journey. We had the good fortune to go IPO on NASDAQ and all that stuff. So and I was one of the officers on a listed company. Never dreamt of that. None of that would have happened if I had not gone for this path. Because Make My Trip was not interested in me for head of engineering. They were interested in me because I was the head of product for Google India. Head of Google India was not interested in me in a product. They were interested in me for engineering. And that was serendipitous. You can say it's luck, and there is definitely a big amount of luck in all of this. I think life is, if I ask any of you that are working, how many of you doing exactly what you thought you would be doing when you were 18 years old or 20 years old? Just raise your hands. How many of you are doing what you thought you would be doing when Divya? Clearly the evolved one. So we always have one evolved one. How many of you are doing the job that you thought you'd be doing once you already started working, let's say 23, 24, 25? Very few, maybe like 10%, 15%, okay? And so the thing is that you don't really know, right? Steve Jobs always used to say, it's very, very hard to connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, right? And those of you that have read and studied about him, he went and studied calligraphy in Japan. He actually came and did meditation in India for 2 months when he was like a teenager or late teens, early 20s. And anyway, there are many, many people. So you can't really know what the non-linear jumps are going to be, and we'll talk more about this later. So I was doing really well in the classic corporate ladder, making good amount of money. We had an IPO'd company, all that stuff, going really well. And it was still, didn't feel very gratifying, right? I mean, the money was very good, there was some power, in a good, and we were like one of the earliest e-commerce companies in India, so a lot of fame that came with that. But it didn't feel gratifying, it didn't feel satisfying. It was something sort of missing. And I met one of the people that I'm really, really inspired by, and that was actually a big trigger for my next sabbatical, which is Nandan Nilekani. So I met him in, I think 2012. Perhaps 2013, and basically Nandan was giving a talk in South Delhi about UIDAI, which is the Aadhaar project, as most of us will know. And I was always fascinated with him as a leader of Infosys, co-founder, CEO, chairman, etc. And I got an opportunity to spend some time with him. I mean, literally, he gave his talk, and he was meeting like a subset of us. And I was asking him, saying, hey Nandan, you went from being a founder of Infosys, 20-30 years, IPO, NASDAQ, running it, multi-billion dollar company in revenue, right? Not in GFV or anything fuzzy. And now you're doing UIDAI, right? And before that, he had written this beautiful book called Imagining India. So he became an author, then he went to the government, became the chairman of UIDAI, and he started UIDAI by himself as a single person. Imagine going as the chairman of Infosys, one of the most successful tech companies from India, probably even today, and suddenly going to the government, which seems so bureaucratic, right? You can't even deal with, even to get your BESCOM transferred is gives me creeps, right? So to say, look, I'm going to build this national identity system for India. And what he said was very, very inspiring for me, which is, Amit, if you don't reinvent yourself every 5 to 10 years, you're going to be fish out of water. You're going to be dead anyway, right? So you have to keep finding how you're going to reinvent yourself every 5 to 10 years, right? And actually, reinvention is not always about success. He went to the Congress, and he of course ran for politics, and it turned out to be a miserable failure. You got to move on, right? So he went, he failed, he tried, he thought he could have even bigger impact than chairman of Aadhaar to go to this, and he said that was a bad decision and moved on. Now he's on to his next journey where he's building this thing called 8-Step. But anyway, so the point is, reinvention is about every 5 to 10 years figuring out what is the next big thing you're going to do, how are you going to go jump to that. So anyway, I decided, okay, I'm going to quit. So much like my boss had called on the 9th of January, in 2007, I went up to my boss Deep and I said, hey Deep, I'm done. And it's not like I'm leaving today, tomorrow, but in the next year I'm going to move out. So he said, okay, what happened? Like who did what? Like what's going on? I said, no, I'm done. So what are you going to do? I don't know. What do you mean I don't know? You must have a job from somebody, right? Like is it Google, is it Facebook, what is going on? Or you will start a company? I said, actually, I really don't know. I'm going to spend some time trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And he's like the typical, I mean, he's like a Sachin Tendulkar of entrepreneurship, at least certainly to me, he's been very, very gracious and kind. He's like, he's like, I am Ahmedabad, SRCC, whatever, like all the brands, right? He's like, nobody just quits, dude. Like, you can just take a sabbatical. You take 3 months paid leave, come back, like go to the Himalayas, come back, like then go back and do product, right? You go international, make my trip international, right? Like we're going to acquire a bunch of companies, go be the CEO of one of the company. I think I really am done with that wheel, right? Like I'm done, right? I'm like feel like I'm just doing the same thing. Something is not feeling fulfilling. So that is how we decided again. All our sabbaticals are preceded with physical moves, and Preeti has been incredibly helpful and supportive. So we literally packed our bags and moved to Bangalore. We said there are only 2 places in the world we can go. One is Bangalore, the other is back to the Bay Area. And we decided we loved India, we want to stay in India, so we moved to Bangalore. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the sabbatical and what benefit did it have or not, and then the 5 bits of whether anyone here can take a sabbatical or even take a time off. By the way, by a sabbatical, I don't mean you need to take a year off or 6 months or 3 months. It could be a week off, it could be 10 days, it could be 2 weeks trekking in the Himalayas. It's just really taking meaningful time off for yourself, where you have time to reflect, where you have time to introspect, where you're away from the day-to-day grind, whether it's of the corporate world or at home. If you're a homemaker, it doesn't matter. How much ever time you can take off. So I used to love to read, and then I had in the whole corporate game, I had pretty much sort of given up on reading. I used to maybe read 8-10 books a year in the early days after graduating, maybe first 5-7 years of my career, and I literally stopped reading. So one of the first things I did is, of course, the first thing I did is I went to China for 3 weeks on a solo backpacking trip. I was still interested in keep hearing about China, so I said, never been to China, let me go to China. Soon thereafter, I basically must have gone and bought like 100 books. And I went and read a whole bunch of books. And in particular, I was very, very fascinated by 2 topics. Maybe state of mind, maybe midlife crisis, whatever. One was death or mortality, and the other one was happiness. So I said, Charlie Munger, who's co-founder with Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, one of the smartest men in the world, actually, even more than being rich. He always has this thing he calls the inversion principle, saying, go to the end and reverse engineer your way back to where you want to be. So I said, imagine if you're like at your deathbed, what's going to matter? That's when I found Bronnie Ware's book. That's when I found, the last lecture by Randy Pausch. If you haven't seen this video or this book, it's incredible. I read Be Immortal by Atul Gawande, and everywhere I went, and I must have read some 10 or 15 books about death. My wife actually thought I was going mental. Saying, why are you reading about death? What's wrong with you? Are you do you have some other ideas which you're not sharing? Right? And so I went and read a whole bunch of books about death and meaning of death, purpose of death, what happens, on the Hindu side, the reincarnation, all that stuff. I went and read a lot about that. I also read a lot about happiness and meaning and purpose, right? So if you look at one of my favorite books that I've gifted of all time, maybe a few 100 copies, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, right? Which is really saying, this guy was an Auschwitz survivor. He was in a Nazi camp. He was a psychologist who was in there. He lost everybody, okay? And they used to live on 1 loaf of bread, for those of you that have read anything about kind of the Nazi era. And he was one of the few survivors. And the reason he survived, and he says anybody in Auschwitz that survived, because conditions were completely inhumane, they had a meaning, they had a purpose, they had something from within that they were chasing. His meaning and purpose was that if I get out ever, I will help the world realize that they can live in any circumstance, in any situation, even something as bad as in Auschwitz, okay? So he kept writing this book in his head, Man's Search for Meaning, while being there, saying, if I ever get alive, knowing fully well, every day you go, the probability of dying is like 30%. Unlike even a palliative care patient or any of us, we could all die today, tomorrow, God forbid. But in his case, he knew literally he could die any day. And he did this. And so it started driving this thing in my mind of, I need to find meaning, I need to find purpose. That maybe will lead to happiness, that will lead to fulfillment. So then I started reading things like, Meher Shizimanowski's book about flow, Daniel Gilbert, like a whole bunch of books on happiness. I must have read some 30 odd books about happiness, and saying, okay, what is happiness? What is the definition? Who are the people that I think are happy? Can I go talk to these people and say, wow, what is giving you happiness and all this stuff? So I did that, and it was very, very intriguing. Believe it or not, and I'll talk about this in just a second, just reading and connecting about happiness gave me my second biggest career break, which was becoming a VC, a venture capitalist. And you think it's completely opposite, right? VCs are like capitalistic dudes, right? What does that have to do with happiness? It's got nothing. It's to do with more money. It turned out my two partners that I ended up meeting were in the context of talking about happiness at a Microsoft event. We were all mentors, mentoring startups. And we met and we started somehow randomly at 10 at night talking about happiness. And we ended up talking for 2.5 hours about happiness and meaning and purpose. And then he said, oh, I heard you moved back to Bangalore from Gurgaon. Make My Trip was in Gurgaon, so that's where we were based. And he said, yes, I have. And he said, oh, what are you doing now? Like, just chilling, I'm not doing anything, I'm on a sabbatical. Like, how long have you been on a sabbatical? Been on a sabbatical for about 6 months. He's like, nobody does a sabbatical for 6 months. What's wrong with you? Why don't you come and join us, right? And obviously one thing led to another, and I ended up joining them completely with no background in VC, no background in investing, nothing, literally talking about meaning and purpose and happiness. That's probably not why I got hired or didn't get, as a partner. There's no cause and effect. But the fact is, I was in this frame of mind where I was not really saying I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking for meaning, or I'm looking to become a VC, or I'm looking to become a founder. So anyway, so a lot of reading, that was very interesting. Also discovered, I'd heard about Maslow, everybody had heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I really got into Maslow. I also got into a little bit of the Hinduism literature, and really figured out that a lot of us end up spending our time in the lower end of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is, roti, kapda and makan, right? And money, and more money, and roti, kapda and makan, right? Like really food, shelter, love, belonging. As you get to mid-career, a bit of self-esteem, a bit of recognition, a bit of, I want to be recognized, I want to be a vice president, I want to be a CEO, I want to be a founder, whatever is your drive, I want to be, mom of the year, all that will start happening. And actually then I went and read a bunch of stuff around the kind of Hinduism literature and found that in the 4 kind of pillars of life that people talk about in Hinduism, which is the brahmacharya, grihasthashram, vanprasthashram, and then sannyas, it also mimics literally Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And of course, Maslow came much, much later, thousands of years later. Maslow wrote this in like 1953 or something like that, right? 50, 60 years ago, maybe 70 years ago. This is like thousands of years ago. And they all say, look, the reason it's structured in this, brahmacharya, grihasthashram and so on is as you make more progress in life, as you get more money, as you get more resources, as you get more evolved, you want to start thinking about social responsibility. You want to start thinking about giving back. You want to start thinking about meaning, purpose, right? What is your higher calling? How do you get to self-actualization? How do you get to self-realization, right? And so this started to have so now I started to feel like I was getting some direction, like I was getting some clarity saying, look, I'm completely stuck here, right? In terms of my journey. It's me, job, next job, when will I become CEO? How come there are 3 founders, the chance of me becoming CEO is very low, or it'll take me 10 years to become CEO. Maybe I should go to a smaller company. Everything was just about that. Everything was here, right? Everything was self-esteem, achievement. And most of us here, you probably wouldn't be here if you didn't have an achievement gene in you, right? So this sort of kept happening, and I said, no, I got to do something. So this is interesting. So this is what I ended up doing in my in my sabbatical. Just take a quick sip of water here. So I spent a lot of time with friends and family. Literally people that I had forgotten, people that are friends with me in college, high school, whatever. I spent a lot of time with them. I tried to meet as many interesting people I could. I met people who were accomplished dancers, musicians, people who were doing yoga, meditation. Although I didn't start on yoga and meditation until I came to Espana. I have Espana to thank. Actually, I have many things to thank Espana for. Badminton, Guru Pankaj got me started on badminton. I pretty much started and given up after a few sessions, and Pankaj said, no, dude, you can continue, it's fine, we're all learning, it's okay. Yoga was this year actually for the first time, 2018 January, thanks to LD and the gang. Never did gymming until I met Manisha and Rahul Agarwal, running, Meenal, Tarun. So many different things. Interesting. By the way, these are all not started in the sabbatical, just to put it in perspective. But my crazy focus on health, fitness, etc., etc. That started during my sabbatical, saying I need to take care of my health, focus on weight loss, eat better. But all this stuff, earlier this year I went for my first Vipassana, which was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. So the trigger and the spark of all this imagination started there. And some things also started there. I had a lot of weight loss, I lost some 10, 12 kgs, etc. Focus on sleep. So we used to pride ourselves on, we're going to do 80 hours a week, we're going to do 80 hours a week, right? And then I realized how important sleep was for mental and physical health, for muscle growth, for weight loss, for so many things. So if you don't sleep 7 hours in a row, that's really, really bad for you. And despite all the macho stuff, right? You need to sleep 7 hours at a stretch. You can't make it up in the afternoon. A lot of focus on creative potential, right? Again, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I used to love to cook in the US. I'd stop because India you have all these maids and cooks and this and that. And I used to love to cook more as self-expression, more as it would just give me creative joy because I would do things. So I did that. Reading, of course, I recultivated into a big habit. So I now read about 50 books a year, about 1 a week. But this is pretty much something I'd completely given up. And that had a huge impact on other things later. For example, 2-3 years after the sabbatical, maybe 2 years after the sabbatical, I started to write. And I have never written to save, I couldn't write to save my life. But we all do emails and business documents and presentations and conferences, that's all okay. But to really write about something, right? I couldn't. And literally I started writing because through this I had to figure out that self-expression is important to me. Self-realization is important. Learning new skills is important, right? Scott Adams, the founder of Dilbert, he has this really cool thing which he says that be the best in the world, not in one skill, in a combination of skills. So there are very few people in the world that can write and travel and know product management and have lived in US and India. And if I keep adding it, eventually it will be like hopefully me, right? And so if you keep adding different skills as you go along, that actually has a material impact to your career. It actually has a material impact to your profession. So for example, I went from not writing a single article at all to becoming LinkedIn top voices. That was just completely, basically I just said, look, I can do it, and I wasn't aspiring to be this. This was a pleasant surprise. But I just said, I just keep writing 12 articles a year, then next year 25 articles, this year I want to write 50 articles. And I'll get better, right? I mean, there's so many better writers even here in this audience, right? Another thing I want to talk about career. Career is not just about money, right? A lot of people say, get a job, get a career, or get a calling. Are you maximizing to your potential, right? I think Divya gave a talk, I think Bindu gave this talk about, are you producing at 10x? Are you producing at 100x? And that only happens, I'll come to that in a second, okay? So lot of clarity. When I left, I thought, look, I want to be CEO. That was my biggest dream. Saying, I want to be CEO of a company, that's all that matters. Okay, the sabbatical is fine, I'll take some time, but at the end I'm going to go become a CEO. Either I'll start my company, because then if I start it, then I'm definitely going to make myself CEO, even if nobody wants to hire me. Or if I can't, then of course there are enough smaller companies that have been calling saying, hey, why don't you come join us, be a CEO and all that stuff. I really realized that it was not really CEO that I wanted to be during the course of the sabbatical 6-8 months. As I read about death, mortality, happiness, all this other stuff, I realized I wanted to be a part of a lot of different ideas. I wanted to create a lot of different things. I wanted to be more fulfilled. I used to love to travel. I wanted to travel 150 countries, right? All these things were so much more important to me than being CEO. I said, why the heck have I been talking about wanting to be CEO, And I did that Toyota 5 Whys. Those of you that are familiar with Toyota's, 5 Whys system, which is keep asking why 5 times. If you say, I want to be CEO because every Tom, Dick and Harry is becoming CEO, so then certainly Amit, Somani can become a CEO. What's the big deal, right? I said, that's just ego, that's just vanity, right? Like, why is that important that people think that you're a CEO? And I said, oh, well, maybe it's fame and money. Well, not really. We were very sort of middle class kind of background, maybe upper middle class now with some success. I don't really care whether I'm flying business class or first class. It doesn't matter to me. I'm happy to go economy. I'm happy to travel and train. So it's not money. It's something else. Why do I want to be CEO? Why? And after 3 or 4 attempts, I couldn't answer it. Right? So it was a lot of the kind of stuff up for top because that's what the environment was saying. Hey Amit, how long are you going to be a CXO? It's time for you to be a CEO, right? Like you got to do something. And I'm like, everybody's saying I should be CEO, so therefore I should be CEO. And if I'm not becoming CEO, something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not capable enough. So anyway, now to Pankaj's questions. Number 1, I actually thought through what would be the top 5 reasons why people don't take breaks. Okay? Number 1, you don't have money to do it. And I'm going to go bust each of these myths. Okay? At least in the way I see it. I'll re-clarify because some of you came in a little bit later. A sabbatical or a jobbatical is not necessarily taking a year off, although that I think is the most effective, and I'll tell you why. A sabbatical or jobbatical is just taking some large amount of unstructured time for yourself. Whether it be a week, whether it be 10 days, whether it be a month, longer the better, right? I would say at least 3 months would be ideal. If those of you are in a corporate job, right, like HP, Intel, etc., IBM, they have structured sabbatical program. Most people don't even take that or take it in a very modest way. But so don't have the money, don't have the time, can't walk away from my career. My friends and family will hate me. They think I've gone completely off the deep end. And lastly, even if I was to take this plunge and even if I was to take this risk, dude, you just got lucky, right? Like, I'm not going to become a VC or a product manager or a CEO. That's just luck. Don't confuse yourself. I have become a big believer in luck. I've become a big believer in serendipity for a variety of reasons, which I won't talk about today. But let's go through each of these in order. What time is it?
You're doing okay.
Okay. Number one. So again, because I got into this habit of reading a lot, so I went and read about money and saying how much money is enough. Turns out that there's a marginal value of money. Okay, and there are 3 different points on this axis. You get more joy with more money, right? If you're nothing, you're starting out, you own nothing, you have no asset. You know, of course, I would say the childhood curve is different. This is post adulthood, right? Once you get into the real world, parents are not sponsoring you. I see a younger gentleman in the back there. So there's a marginal value of money. So until you get to A, right, which is at least a certain threshold. And by the way, even for this, there are studies in the US, believe it or not, where the per capita is $50,000 or $40,000. The study says that once you can make $50,000 a year and have a net worth of $500,000, it's roughly about 3.5 crores, right? Money will make no difference to your happiness, to your joy. Okay, and you'll be all going, what the hell, dude? Like even Espana, I can't buy an apartment for 3 crores, right? For 3.5 crores. Okay, maybe now you can with the downturn. So be it as it may, for a billionaire, for them it might, the marginal value of money might decline at $1 billion. But guess what? A lot of these billionaires you meet, they're feeling like, well, I'm not worth 10 billion. Well, I'm not Jeff Bezos. I'm not Bill Gates. I can't eradicate malaria from the world. Like I want to donate $1 billion to malaria, or I want to donate $1 billion to teaching people about compassion. Or like that's not enough, because I'm only worth $1 billion. I can't give away $1 billion. So you go up, but the marginal joy that you get is much, much lesser. So you define your A, you define your B, but certainly as you keep going, it declines exponentially. So whether you're worth, and for each their own, right? So you can't pick what amount of money. So we realized, for at least for Preeti and I, that look, you know, we're like dal roti kind of people. Like this is enough. And for anybody else, I would have probably been worth much more if I'd either stayed at Make My Trip or Google or anything else. I'm actually worth probably much lesser now than I was 4 or 5 years ago. But we said, look, we want to accomplish more in other areas. So that was the first thing, right? The second thing was the practical aspect of taking money, bankrolling it. We have Standard Chartered up here to give you sabbatical loans. New line of business. My turn to get back.
What is the collateral?
You just came to this talk. Espana. Say from your Espana, you came to the sabbatical talk. You were there. We've got it on video. And so all you need is to save probably 12 to about 18 months of saving of your household expenses, if you want to take that chance, right? That's it. So literally actually made a spreadsheet, I made expenses and sat down with Preeti, etc. and we said, hey look, this is the amount of expenses we think we're going to burn. I'm going to take this aside and put it in an FD, and I can guarantee every single person in this room can afford to not have 12 months of a paycheck, right? I can guarantee it. That's just living expenses. That's not, you know, aspiration for wealth or saying, oh, I want to be worth $10 million or $100 million or a billionaire. That's all. If that's your calling, by the way, there's nothing wrong in your calling being that of making more money because whatever. But if that's your calling, then that's fine, right? Then you go all out, all in. Sorry, all out. So anyway, so the point was really that the marginal values money is not that high. Put aside living expenses. And then it depends, right? If you're taking a month off, that's absolutely 120% sure that it won't matter. But I guarantee you, hopefully, at least you'll think about this when you go back, but you would never think of taking a month off from your job, even unpaid. Because you'd be like not only it's money, like I'm walking away, something might happen in the background, whatever. That brings us to the second thing, time. Very interesting, right? So busy slides, I'm going to blank it out for a sec. Okay, let me just talk about it. So, like I said, we live 30,000 days. We live 30,000 days, 15,000 days are gone for the men at least, right? Another 10,000 days to go. However, if you look at lifespan, 82 years, most people will take about 15 years of retirement in any which scenario, right? We have some very inspiring folks here. But let's say you take 15 years, maybe 10 years, you take some time off in your retirement. You won't, probably be working. I mean, you may be working, but for joy or whatever it is, right? And so if you take 15 years of retirement, all I'm saying is, rather than take your retirement when you're 67 or 68 or 70, let's say you live to 80, 85, why don't you take that 1 year now? Or take that 1 year in the course of your 20 years career? Because the meaning and purpose and impact that you're going to get is going to be spread over 40 years, right? Rather than just it impacting 1 or 2 grandchildren or, maybe some, religious, Tirath Yatra or whatever, maybe writing a book. You could be doing a lot more to kind of fulfill yourself. So literally, my first argument is, anyone take 15 years off. I'm saying remove that deferred gratification, take that 1 year now, right? And 1 year is spread out, notional, right? Could be 3 months now, 3 months in 5 years, 3 months in, or 6 months now, 3 months some other time. The second, right, and again, a lot of this was there in Divya's talk, a little bit in Bindu's as well, was if you start fulfilling yourself holistically, okay? So this is something that I got from the South Asian Heart Institute in the Bay Area during post my sabbatical called MEDS. Meditation, exercise, diet and sleep. This I learned about 3 years ago. Each one of them has a dramatic impact on your output, on your productivity, on of course your well-being, physical and mental health well-being. So the more you practice this, the more you find that you can anyway accomplish. So the notional 1 year committed or 3 months or 10 days committed, you'll make it up in no time, right? So how many of you felt in a state of flow? Again, Mihail Csikszentmihalyi always talks about this, right? Where you feel like in half an hour you accomplished what you couldn't do in like 3 days or 2 days because you just get in the zone. You'll see this with athletes a lot, right? I'm a big fan of Virat Kohli, he scored another century today. Where you just get in the zone and it's like, you can do whatever this guy, I mean, he's just in some other planet. You'll see this in basketball players, you'll see this, in Roger Federer. If you are doing all of meds, you find, and I mean, some of this I've started more recently. Meditation is for me like a 2-year-old phenomenon. But I find that my productivity and my creativity is much more enhanced. So I'm actually producing more with lesser time, right? So I'm producing more with lesser time. So anyway, so I think time is not the thing. One of the best articles I got gifted by one of my early managers was this article from the Harvard Business Review called Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. Strongly recommend you guys read it. It's freely available in PDF if you Google it. Manage your energy, not your time. Because saying we have this myth of managing time, I don't have time, I don't have time. Focus on how much energy do you have and just say I'm going to maximize creating more energy. And all of that keeps aligning back to purpose, meaning, rest, relaxation, rejuvenation, etc. So the more you're rested, the more energy you have, the more energy you have, the more irrelevant time is, right? And so it's like really you have to take a step back to speed up. You may have heard this quote that, slow down to speed up. Sometimes even in our startups we talk about this, saying let's slow down to speed up, right? Let's get the basic foundations sorted. Because once that is sorted, then we can go run the marathon, then we can go do something more meaningful. I think careers and jobs are much more than about money, right? And this is something that I got from a book called Good to Great, which I read many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. It's one of the best business books I think of all time, by Jim Collins. And he has 3 circles he does. He does this in the context of companies. I've blatantly stolen it in the context of human beings, us, right? Which is companies. What are you passionate about? Often comes from the founding teams or from the ethos of the company. What can you be the best in the world at? I talked about Scott Adams, the founder of Dilbert, saying figure out all the unique things that are uniquely you, that define your purpose, your meaning, your calling, your contribution. And then see, does it drive your economic engine, right? Does it help you live a life, right? Because you do have to live a life. You have to, pay for the house, the mortgage, the kids, the travel, all that stuff. So you do need to make money. This is not a renunciation or a walk away conversation. And so if you find the circle in the middle where something that you're really passionate about, something that you're really good at, and that has some economic value, then the sky's the limit, right? Because then you get into flow, then you get into the zone, then you get into super performance, because then it doesn't feel like work, right? again, somebody wise has said, if you find your calling, then not a single day of your life will feel like work because you're doing what your calling is, right? Viktor Frankl, In Search of Meaning, saying if you find purpose, you can be living every day not knowing if you're going to die today, but you're going to be super happy and you're going to be super productive. So what? Yeah.
I'm still a lot of creative people. And a lot of creative people spend a lot of their energy doing what they like doing, but yet they feel exhausted because I mean they're of course doing what they really are made for.
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends, she's the editor of Femina, and she's written ever since. And I'm from retail and work with a lot of designers who love to design.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you do so much of it, you get exhausted as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just that you have to continue to do what you like to do, you can go on forever.
Yeah. So I'll take that in just a second, but I'll go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So what you typically find, much like if you go to a doctor, right? We have Dr. Shantanu here. You'll do a full annual health checkup. You'll say, oh, your B12 is low, D3 is not well. You got to do this. You need to exercise more, eat less. Reduce weight, all that good stuff, right? At a holistic whole, if you're not fulfilled, right? I mean, when I was fascinated with death, right? I was reading about a lot of these guys, and unfortunately, Robin Williams committed suicide. A lot of these other people, very unfulfilled. Most creative person probably ever in the history of maybe Hollywood, right? And it's very unfulfilled in the end. And so what happens is some part of your life is unfulfilled, right? It could be to serve others, it could be to satisfy yourself, it could be to true to yourself. You may be an amazing painter, but what if you don't want to paint, right? I mean, but people are saying, much like people might be telling, Pankaj to say, hey, become a CEO, me to say, hey, look, become a this thing, and I don't want to become that. But you're really good at it, right? You're really good at it, and it's making you so much money. Most jobs, I think, are here. You're good at it, it makes you money. I don't want to be an engineer, right? I want to be something else, but I don't know what that is, right? You tell me, hey, what do you want? What is next? I don't know. So you have to figure out what you're passionate about. More likely than not, though, I feel that it will be somewhere here that some part of this will be unfulfilled, right? I don't know what, right? And we can take it offline. I just want to wrap up here because of the video. We're going to run out of space here. But just hold on to that. I'll come back to it in a second. So then what happens is when you're really good at something and in your job, you reach a certain cusp of competence, you grow exponentially, and then you plateau. Because there's only so much kind of you're going to do at a certain level, right? Because until you're basically jumping onto the next curve in terms of skills, in terms of competence, in terms of. So what typically happens, at least I feel, again, not necessarily cause and effect, but is that just like companies have S curves, right? Very few companies now, even in the S&P 500, which is the largest index of the 500 biggest companies in the US, a company goes from reaching the S&P 500, which is, think of it as the top 500 in the world, to dying, like disappearing in 25 years. So if companies which are reaching S&P 500 with market caps of 20, 30, 50, $100 billion are going to die in 25 years, each of us, from a career perspective, if we don't keep jumping the wave and getting to the next thing, we're going to be gone. For our children, given what's happening with AI and with machine learning, I don't even know what this curve will look like. It will be something really bizarre. In fact, I've been telling everyone that is asking me for career advice, young folks, to say, go learn about humanities, go learn about the right brain, because the left brain is going to be run by machines, right? So all of us who got through with chartered accountancy, engineering, MBA, finance, etc., we're still sort of okay because we're halfway through, right? Our kids won't have that luxury, so machines are going to do all that. So you better have some other value add. Could be leadership, could be teamwork, could be communication skills, whatever. So figure out how to jump the job curve. Myth number 4, my family and friends won't support me. At worst they'll think I'm lunatic, at best they'll think like, what the heck, even I want a vacation, right? You want a 1-year vacation to go on the beach in Thailand and just chill? I want that too. Like, why is it? And by the way, I've known people who have, as a family, taken a sabbatical with kids and traveled the world for a year, taking kids out of school. And they've said that it has been one of the most phenomenal experiences of the family as a lifetime. Because they went and lived in 5 countries in a year, kids out of school, doing whatever international schooling, etc. So just a little phrase. My voice is getting a little sore, so I'll let you read it for yourself. Pay attention to this. I hope everybody can read this. You lift me up and set me free, so I can be all that I can be. Up with the best of humanity, found in true friends and family. I don't think it's your family that's going to stop you. I don't think it's your friends that are going to stop you. I think it's you that's going to stop yourself because you're scared, you're fearful, you're anxious, you're not sure, etc., etc. Right? Once you decide, and I certainly want to thank Preeti, she's been like a rock in all of this. Every time I've had these crazy impulses to say I'm going to leave and like leave everything and we won't have any money and here's the spreadsheet and I'm going to put an FD. She's like, what? And so what are you going to do? Like, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out. But it's okay, worst case, a year later I'll get a job, right? Something, I have enough now background. So I think you'll get the support from the friends and family. You do need to, from a pure management perspective, you do need to set expectations. So even every sabbatical I've taken, I've always said, look, I'm taking from here to April 1st, 2019 off. And I'm going to do 6 months, I'm just going to do nothing, read, think, travel, meet people, whatever. After that, I'll start dabbling in some stuff. After this, if by February 1st I haven't found anything, then I'll start looking for a job. Right? And if that doesn't happen, then it's okay. Then anyway, I mean, I'll go do something. So I don't think that's a particular constraint or that's a myth. So let me just...
I went to my boss and said to him...
So this is Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, talking about two important things. I'll let you listen to the video and then I'll talk about it.
I'm going to go do this crazy thing and I'm going to start this company selling books online. And this is something that I already been talking to him
So he's like 41, 42, miraculous, right? Maybe midlife crisis.
So let's go on a walk.
He says, I'm going to start Amazon.
Walk in Central Park in New York City. And the conclusion of that was this, he said, this actually sounds like a really good idea. But it sounds like it would be a better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job.
He said it's a good idea, but it would be an even better idea for somebody who did already have a good job, and he was a Wall Street trader, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So he typically left in the middle of the year, probably leaving like $1 million in bonus, and now he's the richest man in the world. Now pay attention. One more interesting thing that he says.
48 hours before making a final decision. And so I went away and was trying to find the right framework in which to make that kind of big decision. And I'd already talked to my wife about this, and she was very supportive and said, look, you can count me in 100%. Whatever you want to do, that's true. She had married this kind of, fairly stable guy in a stable career path, and now he wanted to go do this crazy thing, but she was 100% supportive. So it really was a decision that I had to make for myself. And the framework I found, which made the decision incredibly easy, was what I called, which only a nerd would call, a regret minimization framework. So I wanted to project myself forward to age 80 and say, okay, now I'm looking back on my life.
Magical numbers, age 80.
Minimize the number of regrets I have. And I knew that when I was 80, I was not going to regret having tried this. I was not going to regret having trying to participate in this thing called the internet that I thought was going to be a really big deal. I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret that. But I knew the one thing I might regret is not ever having tried. And I knew that that would haunt me every day. And so when I thought about it that way, it was an incredibly easy decision. And I think that's a very good, it's if you can project yourself out to age 80 and sort of think, what will I think at that time? It gets you away from some of the daily pieces of confusion. I left this Wall Street firm in the middle of the year.
So, to not take any risk is really the biggest risk of all, right? So this regret minimization framework, this actually I saw before I did my second sabbatical. And I said, look, what regret will I have that I didn't try this, right? I thought that I have a lot of this other potential, creative potential, other things, I don't know. But I always feel like, no, I just went to the next job, or next thing. I didn't have this chance. So I think that whether it's a guarantee that you will find the promised land is unclear. But what I can guarantee you is you'll be definitely way more fulfilled, right? If you go down this path. In my case, perhaps I was lucky, fortunate, perhaps it was serendipity that I ended up doing better in my career than I would have thought. As an engineering manager, director, VP, I would have probably been having a team of 5,000 engineers working for me, whatever, being a big, fat, cushy job. But I would not be as fulfilled that I feel I am if I hadn't made those kind of transitions. So, friends, like I said at the beginning of my talk, we have a finite amount of time that is left for all of us. we should bring out our dreams, we should bring out our ideas. If you have something in your mind, if there's a place you want to travel, if it's a game you want to see, if something you want to do with your kids, whatever it is, let's not live in the world of deferred gratification. Like Bronnie Ware's patients, hopefully when we are looking back, when we are 80 years old and looking back at this life, we will covet more Father of the Year award or Daughter of a Lifetime or Friend Forever, or dreams that we brought to the table, or impact that we make into society, or things that we did that were more fulfilling, and most importantly, that we found and served our true calling, that we found our purpose as to why we are on this earth, and that we were able to make a positive contribution and were very sort of fulfilled. So I'll end with a quote from one of my favorite leaders, Nelson Mandela. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, he says, and I hope that and wish and pray that all of our choices are determined more by our hopes and not by our fears. That's it. Thank you.